Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we dig through stacks of complex info, sources, reports, and pull out those really crucial nuggets of knowledge. We want to get you instantly well-informed. Today, we're plunging into Nepal. We're looking at its current economic and political landscape. It's a truly fascinating case study, isn't it? You see this resilience meeting some pretty formidable challenges. So our mission for this deep dive, it's to really distill the essential insights from the material we've gathered, help you quickly grasp what's truly important about Nepal's situation right now.
Exactly. And the sources we've looked at, they really do suggest Nepal's a critical point,
Yeah.
critical juncture. What's so compelling, I think, is watching how its economic resilience, which is genuinely impressive, how it constantly bumps up against these, deeply ingrained political complexities. It's a real dynamic tension that just defines the country.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting with the economic overview. And this surprising resilience you mentioned. Despite everything thrown its way, we're seeing some genuinely encouraging GDP growth projections. The economy is expected to grow by around, 4.5 to 4.6% in this current fiscal year, FY 2024-25. That's their financial year ending mid-July, just for clarity. And that's actually up from about 3.9% in the last fiscal year. And they're expecting continued strength, maybe right into FY 2026-27. That's pretty solid, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yeah. And that growth isn't just, appearing out of nowhere. It's driven by a few key sectors. Services, for instance, they lead the pack, making up approximately 62% of the GDP. Then you've got agriculture contributing about 25%, and industry somewhere around 13%, and the specific growth drivers, things like a booming hydropower sector, strong domestic trade, and apparently a particularly robust paddy season recently. It's a mix that's clearly working for them, at least right now.
Right. And when you look at the sort of macro financial indicators, things also seem pretty stable on the surface. Consumer inflation is hovering near 5%, which seems manageable. Foreign exchange reserves, really robust, covering over 14 months of imports. 14 months. Wow.
Yeah, it's significant.
And Nepal even has a current account surplus, around 2 to 2.4% of GDP. It all sounds good on paper, but I guess the question is this stability truly sustainable when we look a little deeper?
That is the core question, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because while those numbers are positive, they're, let's say, significantly propped up by what I'd call Nepal's kind of strategic economic superpowers.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. When we talk about Nepal's unique economic story, remittances, they aren't just a big number. They're like the invisible backbone of the economy. Think about it. A quarter to maybe even a third of their entire GDP just flows in from citizens working abroad. This isn't just income, it's a massive sort of informal social safety net. It buffers economic shocks and, kind of ironically, keeps the lights on despite all the political chaos. It's almost like Nepal's biggest, most stable export, even though no goods are physically leaving the country.
Exactly.
And then that's complemented by tourism, too, right? Which is about, 6.6% of GDP? That's still a huge reliance, but also, you could say, a huge strength.
Absolutely. A huge strength. And you really can't overlook the gains they're making in hydropower. The installed capacity now exceeds 3,600 megawatts. What's particularly noteworthy, I think, is the recent first-time power exports. They're exporting to both Bangladesh and Bihar in India, totaling around 120 megawatts. And this is under brand new multilateral agreements. This is a monumental step, really. Leveraging their natural resources, moving beyond just domestic consumption, it potentially opens up a whole new revenue stream that isn't reliant on, human migration.
So, okay, Nepal's economic report card has some impressive grades, definitely. But let's be clear, this resilience is constantly battling this strong undercurrent of persistent risks that threaten to pull it down. It's like watching a tightrope walker. Yeah, impressive balance, but the wind just keeps blowing, doesn't it? Where do these risks start?
Right. Well, right at the top of that list, according to our sources, is the banking sector stress. We're seeing rising non-performing loans. That's, money lent by banks that isn't being paid back as agreed. It's hovering around 5%. And here's the alarming detail. Over 110,000 individuals have apparently been blacklisted for defaults.
Wow, 110,000.
Yeah. This isn't just a banking problem. It signals deep fragility within the financial system. It could have significant ripple effects on the broader economy and even individual livelihoods.
And beyond the banks, there are these deep structural and governance gaps too, right? They act as a persistent drag. We're talking about things like weak infrastructure, a lack of export diversification, meaning they're not selling enough varied goods to other countries, plus heavy political interference in key institutions, what sources call institutional capture, where public bodies are effectively controlled by private or political interests. And of course, the enduring challenge of its landlocked geography. That adds massive costs to trade.
And a major issue that connects directly to those points is this policy execution lag. It keeps coming up. Our sources highlight a repeated failure to spend capital budgets effectively. Utilization is only around 65%. Imagine having the money and the plans for crucial bridges or power lines, but they never get built on time.
Right.
This directly delays key infrastructure projects and those crucial sectoral reforms that could really propel the economy forward and reduce those structural drags you mentioned.
And we've also seen policy recommendations, haven't we, from various multilateral agreements emphasizing the need for quite targeted reforms. Things like facilitating exports, encouraging more hydropower investment, stabilizing the financial sector, building out digital infrastructure, managing migration more effectively. It sounds like a pretty clear roadmap.
Yeah.
But why aren't these things just happening?
Well, that's really where the political side comes crashing in, isn't it? Looking at the medium-term forecast. While growth of about 5 to 5.5% annually is absolutely feasible if these structural fixes are implemented, we just can't ignore the looming risks. These include that financial system instability we talked about, continued political churn, the issue of unfinished capital projects stemming directly from that execution lag, and of course, broader geopolitical pressures that can always impact a nation like Nepal, stuck between giants. It's this constant battle between what's possible economically and, frankly, what's probable politically.
Okay, so what does this all mean then for the stability and, well, the future of the nation, especially when we shift our focus squarely onto the political sphere? I mean, Nepal has this history of chronic political instability, an astonishing 14 governments since 2008. That's almost one a year. Currently, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli leads a coalition government formed back in July 2024. It controls about 66% of parliament, which sounds stable. But our sources describe the stability as tenuous at best, largely due to, internal rivalries and these constant power rotations. Is it really that unstable day to day?
Well, what's truly fascinating here, and maybe underscores that instability, is the unexpected surge we've seen in monarchist sentiment. We've seen a wave of pro-monarchy demonstrations. Tens of thousands of people in Kathmandu back in March and May of 2025. They were explicitly calling for King Gyanendra Shah's restoration and the reinstatement of Hindu statehood. These aren't fringe protests. They're pretty significant displays of public frustration.
And these protests seem fueled by really deep-seated frustrations, don't they? Things like pervasive corruption, high youth unemployment, and just a general dissatisfaction with the current state of governance. It's also important to note, sadly, that these demonstrations have, at times, turned violent, even resulting in fatalities. So while the monarchists might seem like, a throwback, their movement is a very real symptom of current unrest.
That's exactly right. And while politically, the monarchists only control 13 seats in parliament, and the parliament itself strongly opposes any constitutional reversal, their movement continues to exert significant pressure on the government. It's a clear signal of deep public discontent, regardless of their actual parliamentary presence. It signals a yearning for an alternative, even if that alternative is a return to the past from a significant segment of the population.
And it's not just the monarchist movement, right? Other social movements have gained traction. We saw those nationwide teachers' protests led by the Nepal Teachers Federation in April 2025. They disrupted education services across the country and only ended after a 9-point agreement was finally reached with the government. So, again, another example of how quickly public frustration can just boil over.
Yeah, and if you zoom out on the political landscape, it becomes really clear that governance in Nepal is still plagued by significant challenges. Corruption is a persistent issue. Nepal scores around, 34 out of 100 on the Corruption Perception Index, which is quite low.
Not great.
Not great at all. There's also that institutional capture we mentioned earlier, and just an overall inconsistent approach to policymaking. It's incredibly difficult to plan for the long term when the political ground keeps shifting beneath your feet.
And then there's Nepal's really delicate balancing act in its relations between two giants, India and China. I mean, while there are steady bilateral aid flows coming in from both, Nepal also faces these persistent territorial disputes and, let's face it, undeniable geoeconomic vulnerabilities just due to its position between these two powers. It must be a constant tightrope walk on the international stage, too.
And this brings us right back to the core interplay we talked about at the start. Nepal's economic strengths and its political challenges. They aren't separate issues at all. They're profoundly intertwined. Political instability directly impedes economic progress. We see it clearly in that policy execution lag, in the repeated failure to fully utilize capital budgets for crucial infrastructure projects essential for long-term growth. Imagine trying to build, I don't know, a state-of-the-art skyscraper while the ground beneath it keeps shifting violently. That's kind of like Nepal. Vital economic reforms are perpetually stalled, not usually by lack of funds or even ideas, but by the relentless churn of governments and this bureaucratic inertia it creates.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And our sources, they consistently reiterate that Nepal really stands at a truly critical juncture. It boasts this admirable economic resilience, significantly backed by remittances, its burgeoning hydropower capacity, and a growing tourism sector. Yet this resilience is just starkly contrasted against chronic political instability, a strained financial system, and this weak institutional governance that just seems to hold it back.
Absolutely. And the recent monarchist resurgence, I think, serves as a powerful indicator of that widespread public disillusionment. Even while the Republican system maintains its hold in Parliament, it shows a deep yearning for something different among a significant portion of the population, a feeling that the current system simply isn't delivering for them.
Ultimately, the conclusion from our sources seems pretty clear. Nepal's future depends fundamentally on its ability to implement deep structural reforms. This means strengthening banks, accelerating crucial infrastructure investment, diversifying its exports away from just remittances and tourism, and perhaps the most challenging piece of all, stabilizing its political system.
hmm And these efforts, they're not just essential to sustain that economic momentum we discussed, they're also absolutely crucial for addressing the core frustrations that we've talked about today. The frustrations that fuel social unrest and really threaten the nation's long-term stability. Without genuine political will and some measure of stability, even the most promising economic gains risk being undermined. It all comes back to that connection.
Yeah, it really does. This deep dive has truly highlighted the fascinating and, complex interplay of economic resilience and profound political challenges that define Nepal today. It's a country pulling itself up by its bootstraps in a way, while simultaneously wrestling with all this internal turmoil.
And that really leads to a final, perhaps thought-provoking question for you, our listener, to consider, building on what we've discussed from the source material. Given Nepal's unique position landlocked, heavily reliant on remittances, constantly balancing relations with two major global powers like India and China, how might external geopolitical shifts, or maybe global economic trends, how might they uniquely amplify or perhaps even mitigate its internal struggles for stability and reform?
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Nepal. We hope it encourages you to continue exploring the many complexities of global development and governance.